The art of the deal? The art of failure.
Washington, September 2025. As Donald Trump stood at a podium announcing sweeping new tariffs, 25% on heavy trucks, 30 to 50% on furniture and cabinetry, and up to 100% on branded pharmaceuticals, Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of England, delivered a line that made the entire room erupt in laughter. He mocked Trump's self-proclaimed masterpiece, The Art of the Deal, and for good reason. Because while Trump delivered punchlines, the rest of the world was already bracing for the price tag. According to Reuters and the Washington Post, these new tariffs are not symbolic. They're scheduled to take effect October 1st, and they will hit hard. Higher consumer prices, tighter corporate margins, and retaliatory shocks that no campaign speech can spin away. Here's what they're not telling you. This isn't just about furniture or pharmaceuticals. It's about cascading costs that move faster than the headlines. Reuters already confirmed aluminum flows from Canada are being rerouted. Why? Because tariffs have doubled, first to 25%, now 50%. That means U.S. canners, builders, and manufacturers are about to face tighter supply, higher input costs, and shrinking breathing room. This isn't a debate, it's a direct CPI story. It's your grocery bill, your 401k, your job security. It's economic whiplash disguised as political theater. And the joke? It might just be on you. In this video, we'll unpack what Carney's laughter really signaled, how markets are mispricing tariff risks, what retaliation already looks like on the ground, and why most investors, households, and policymakers are dangerously unprepared. Because while the crowd laughed, the clock was already ticking. Here's what's unfolding while the headlines focus on applause lines. The U.S. government has just released a new wave of tariffs. Starting October 1st, there will be a 25% tariff on heavy trucks, 30 to 50% tariffs on furniture and cabinetry, and up to 100% tariffs on branded pharmaceuticals. This is not political noise. This is a direct cost pipeline into your life and your portfolio. According to Reuters and the Washington Post, these measures are being framed as protective, but the math doesn't lie. Whether you're managing a household budget or sitting on a mid-cap industrial portfolio, the message is the same. Get ready to absorb higher costs. Let's break this down. Tariffs are often framed as a tax on foreign suppliers, but in reality, they're taxes on American consumption. If your fridge breaks, the price of a replacement goes up. If your kid needs a branded asthma inhaler, the copay jumps. If you're remodeling a kitchen, cabinetry just became a luxury item. And if your 401k holds shares in consumer-facing retailers, prepare for margin compression. This isn't theory, it's already in motion. Reuters reports that Canadian aluminum, once a stable source of affordable inputs for U.S. manufacturers, is now being diverted to other markets. First came a 25% tariff. Then it was raised to 50%. The result, domestic supply is shrinking. That means tighter spreads, higher costs for builders and canners, and cascading delays in everything from housing starts to packaged food production. So here's the hidden mechanism. When supply chains reroute, inflation gets imported. Investors often underprice this kind of risk. They assume tariffs are slow to hit. But in today's just-in-time economy, the pass-through is brutal and fast. So what should you do now? Inventory check. If you're running a business or even managing a portfolio, map your SKUs to tariff codes. If you depend on aluminum, steel, heavy trucks, cabinetry, or imported branded drugs, model for a 5 to 12% hit on your gross margin. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between staying above water and cutting staff. Positioning strategy. Shift exposure toward North American producers with low import dependencies and strong pricing power. These are the players who can pass along cost without losing share. Meanwhile, retailers highly exposed to furniture, home goods, or imported pharma, underweight them immediately. And keep your alerts on. The White House has floated the idea of raising steel and aluminum tariffs to 50% across the board. Watch Section 232 announcements like a hawk. That's not a policy memo. It's a volatility trigger. Trade the spread. Look for input-sensitive pair plays where one firm eats costs and another dodges them. Because this isn't about ideology anymore. It's about timing, pricing, and survival. While Trump talks about deals, real costs are cascading through the economy like a slow-motion avalanche. And if you're waiting for the official CPI report to react, you're already too late. If you think the tariff headlines are the full story, think again, because what's happening behind the curtain is even more costly and far less visible. Welcome to the world of non-tariff measures, or NTMS. These are the bureaucratic levers that quietly reshape global trade without triggering headlines or protests. We're talking about product standards, labeling rules, testing requirements, local content thresholds, and procurement restrictions. Individually, they sound technical. Together, they suffocate predictability for cross-border suppliers. According to detailed analysis from the World Trade Organization and the World Bank, NTMS now account for the majority of trade friction between countries. Not tariffs, not embargoes, but rules written quietly by regulators, buried in compliance checklists, and enforced without any fanfare. And here's where it gets dangerous for professionals, suppliers, and even medium-sized exporters. These rules don't show up in customs data. They show up in contract losses. Let's say you're a Canadian equipment supplier. Your pricing beats U.S. competitors. You pass every tariff hurdle, but your product label doesn't meet a new fire safety code from Ohio's procurement board. Or a city council in Michigan decides they now require 60% local content to qualify for a tender. Boom, contract denied. No WTO violation, no appeal, just a clean domestic kill. That's the power of Buy American or Buy Domestic policies at the local and state level. They're not enforced through trade policy. They're executed through procurement budgets. The WTO can't touch them, and companies rarely model them. That's why guidance fails. Public companies often forecast customs duties. They rarely price in a municipal shift in purchasing rules or an obscure labeling requirement in a school district bid. But those are the exact moves that turn cross-border pipelines into dead ends. So what should you do right now? Start with bid hygiene. If you're competing for RFPS in the US, assume a home market bias by default. Price in a 2 to 4% compliance drag, testing, relabeling, pre-qualification, and most importantly, build relationships with local partners who can help you qualify without falling into red tape traps. Adjust your portfolio filters. Tilt toward firms that hold multiple certifications in both the US and Canada, the ones with redundant suppliers and agile compliance teams. These companies don't just survive NTMS, they capitalize on them. Track the right KPIs. Forget lagging indicators like shipment volumes. Focus on quality approval cycle times and rejection rates. If your rejection rate on U.S. contracts starts climbing while nothing else changes, chances are NTMS are tightening around you. Remember, tariffs make noise. NTMS make casualties. They don't trend on social media. They don't trigger political outrage. But they kill margin, sink deals, and quietly reroute millions in procurement dollars, all under the radar. And in a climate where policy is weaponized through economic nationalism, NTMS are the silent knives. They cut without warning, and they leave no fingerprints. Every time Washington announces a new round of tariffs, the news cycle lights up with drama. But the first real reaction, it doesn't come from politicians or journalists. It comes from the currency markets. While most Americans are busy deciphering soundbites, USD/CAD, the exchange rate between the US dollar and the Canadian dollar has already delivered its verdict. No speeches, no spin, just cold numbers reacting to real-world impact. Because here's the truth. Foreign exchange moves faster than policy. And when the White House announces fresh import penalties, currency traders don't wait for Congress. They start pricing in inflation risk, cost pass-through, and economic disruption in real time. Data from the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, has shown how tightly exchange rate movements are linked to trade friction. The logic is brutal. When the U.S. imposes tariffs, costs rise. Companies that rely on Canadian inputs feel the squeeze, and the FX market begins adjusting before most people even know what hit them. But here's the twist, one that escapes most headlines. A rising U.S. dollar can temporarily soften the blow for American importers buying from Canada. It creates the illusion that tariffs aren't biting yet, that things are still manageable, that America First is working. But this illusion fades fast. because as the non-tariff barriers begin to kick in, like local procurement restrictions, labeling rules, and compliance demands, the real costs surface. And that brief currency cushion? Gone. Meanwhile, in Canada, exporters are left to navigate a maze of shifting contract rules, red tape, and declining U.S. demand. It's not just about tariffs. It's about the entire trade relationship recalibrating, one FX tick at a time. And in the middle of all this, regular people, not traders, not diplomats, but those who rely on affordable goods, stable jobs, and predictable supply chains. So when the pundits finally catch up to the consequences, it's already too late, because by then, the market has spoken. And if you're not watching the signals coming from USD/CAD, you're missing the clearest indicator that the so-called deal is unraveling, quietly and in plain sight. So let's rewind. A former central banker mocked Trump's art of the deal. The crowd laughed. Headlines followed. But behind the curtain, tariffs hit 100% on drugs. Canadian aluminum got rerouted. Non-tariff barriers tightened. Currency markets twitched. And yet, most Americans didn't even flinch, because we've been trained to treat trade policy like political theater, like it's about pride, power, or some abstract idea of winning. But here's what winning really looks like: paying 40% more for prescription drugs, losing a cabinet factory contract to a Buy American clause, watching your 401k shrink while the S&P gets blindsided by input costs. This isn't just policy, it's personal, because every new tariff, every procurement restriction, every FX move reshapes the landscape, not in Washington, but on your street, at the grocery store, in the job market, on your utility bill. And while Trump celebrates applause lines, Carney's laughter exposed the elephant in the room. This isn't the art of the deal. It's the price of delusion. So here's your takeaway. Map your exposure, whether you're a business owner, investor, or consumer. Stop waiting for politicians to explain what markets are already signaling. Prepare for a future where nationalism isn't just loud, it's expensive. Because while one side entertains the crowd, the other side is rewriting the rules. And if you're not watching closely, you're not just paying attention late, you're paying the bill.